Don't give a fuck when you land or not, just let him go. Don't worry when you're gonna be a shitty fight, but you gotta let punches go. Last round. You can't wait until they get, if you miss it, bang, and go right back. And don't take 30 seconds to start another fight.
Alexander, I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody closer. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey. There's no one like I'm from Nairclaw. There's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous. My defense is impregnable.
Look at that. Look at that combination. And the turn.
I kept telling him he had no punch, he couldn't hit, he's swinging like a sissy, he's missing, let me see your bump. I hadn't started damping yet. A tremendous sensational first round, and Hearns gets hurt. Hearns got stunned. Paco was stunned early in the round. Great first round. Incredible. Perhaps one of the best in middleweight history.
That black guy, he hits hard.
Fire!
Well, hello! Welcome everybody to another episode of Hands of Fire Boxing Talk. I'm your host, George Dampier, writer and reporter for RealCombatMedia.com. Hopefully that didn't like blow out your eardrums or anything. That was, my little Seinfeld impression. Any 90s kids still watch that or even know that reference? It's crazy to think that's like 20 years ago, like 1996, 20 years ago. Like if you were born 1996, you're 20 years old. What the fuck? I feel old. Anyway, who's not feeling old is Canelo Alvarez, who, I don't know, give me some type of credit for that segue. Canelo Alvarez, coming off his KO victory over, again, I was about to say Callum Smith. Well, maybe he had a better fight. But, yes, Canelo scores a 9th round KO over Liam Smith in the AT&T Arena in Dallas, Texas, in front of 51,000 fans. Not bad for fighting a nobody, huh? Not bad. So, I mean, it's not necessarily what's newsworthy from this fight because we got exactly what we thought we were going to get. So there's nothing really worth talking about, but we will anyway because this is a boxing podcast. Right out the bat, it was a little bit refreshing actually to kind of see Canelo Alvarez with someone not massively outweighing, and it was just refreshing just to see that for the first few rounds. It was evident that obviously Canelo had the sharper boxing skill and clearly the better fighter, more crisp punches, and his punches seemed to be more effective. But in between time, and very, very few and far in between, Liam Smith landed some pretty good shots and had his best success being on the inside. And it seemed like his game plan, at least around that type of game plan that he seemed to have, was to try to weather it early, and he knew that it was going to be a fast start. At least that's what he said in this post-fight interview with Max Kellerman, who really was the star of the night. We'll get to that later. But seemed that Liam really tried to weather the storm a little bit and then try to impose himself throughout the fight. And, I mean, obviously Canelo was coming with the crisper, cleaner, and more effective, clearly harder shots. But in a typical way of, at least the, I say with the exception of Miguel Cotto, it seemed like he didn't necessarily give himself up in the fight. That notification is going to have to get turned off. Anyway, he didn't necessarily really seem like he counted himself out, or at least he always thought he was in it. And that's usually, that's always good for the fight fan because it keeps it competitive, but it also kind creates a certain suspension through the fight of, whether or not he was going to be able to hold on. And what was very noticeable in this fight was the fact that, like I said, the fact that he was in there with someone naturally, or at least closer to his size, because he, of course, still outweighed him, even on top of that. And Liam Smith pointed that out as well in the post-fight interview. That, Jesus, what was the point I was just... Oh, yeah, the fact that that Canelo was actually on the back foot toward somewhat in between the middle. Well, yeah, it had to be the middle of the rounds because it only got to the 9th. But I don't know for certain what round. Maybe I want to say the 3rd. It seemed that Canelo was slowly on the back foot, but it seems to be at least what Canelo is making the I want to say excuse, but the explanation for was that he suffered a injury to his right thumb, and was noticeably there was something different, but it wasn't sure to see if maybe he was struggling with the shape that he was in to make the weight, because of course this is back down at 154 where he again looked not like the same person on Friday. But it wasn't really known for certain if it was just, Canelo being out of shape. Clearly something was up. So it's hard to tell. Was it just Liam Smith applying really good pressure? Of course, maybe it's just a combination of both. And of course, now in retrospect, we know that his hand was hurt. So that played a part too. And all expectations of the fight, the only thing that really trended anything was, and even this isn't really too much of a goes against expectation, is that even though I had, predicted that he would go the distance and he would make Canelo look bad, that's clearly not what happened. But he did present a piece of, I wouldn't even say it's even vulnerability that's really gotten exposed with Canelo, because I think in the end, what we already know about Canelo Alvarez is that he is clearly growing as a counter-punching fighter. Not the slickest, not the most fleet of foot, and not the most defensive fighter. But it's that aggression-leaning fighter growing into a smarter fighter, and I think that's the evolution you see going on with Canelo Alvarez and with each fight. And I think that's maybe what I don't know exactly what De La Hoya's game plan is here, and we'll also talk about him just in a little bit. But maybe he's trying to stall out time to make sure that Canelo does make that change, because within every fight, he's at least seeking to land some hard shots and to get his guy out of there. But within every fight, he's trying to look smarter, look sharper, and clearly with the schooling that I keep going back to that he suffered at the hands of Floyd Mayweather, he's clearly learning defensive tricks, or at least carrying over some of the ones that he got slapped upside the head with to use in future fights. So that's clearly evident, and you see it trying to, or at least see him trying to go toward that direction. Unfortunately, he will always be there to be hit. And even with a guy like Liam Smith, who was taking a huge jump up in competition for this fight, considering the underdog that he was, didn't do too bad. And especially when you put in consideration of what people were thinking at the initial announcement of this fight, nobody gave him a fucking chance. They didn't even want this fight to fucking happen. I mean, still didn't. And we'll see how much the fight was really demanded later on. Here today is Wednesday, September 21st, where the pay-per-view numbers are typically announced. Not a word, not a peep. Haven't heard anything. There have been whispers, though. And if this is true, the cash cow, A-side, all that prize fighter jargon goes out the window if this fight sold under 100,000 pay-per-view buys. And that's kind of what the word is at the moment, is that it's low. And it's gotten or at least through some outlets, and I'm trying to broaden out the people that I follow, and basically boxing is really just run off Twitter. If to get the quickest word, that's the best way to do it. And while there's only a select few that are saying this, the word is that De La Hoya is not happy and is having to explain himself, almost like an irrational woman describing her behavior after a drunk night. Because I'm a bad bitch, that's why. Is that why we're being sold stupid fights? Because Oscar's a bad bitch? Speaking of Oscar De La Hoya, he had a expose TMZ moment live on the air, but not necessarily berated by stupid questions on the side of the street. Good questions and a good... and again, this wasn't even actually toward Oscar De La Hoya, but it's just the comedy really that comes with it is the fact that he's just right there as Max Kellerman is interviewing Canelo Alvarez, who basically goes on to, in fairness, Max Kellerman really went out his way to try to save Canelo. Clearly, Canelo is the one with the burden of this Golovkin fight happening, and of course, being considered a duck, being a weight bully is pretty much what my main criticism of Canelo Alvarez. But basically, just the fact that he's the reason why this fight is not happening, or at least why it's taking so long to happen. And Max Kellerman just said, and he's under the belief that Canelo Alvarez is not afraid of Triple G. And partially, I do agree with that, but unfortunately, there's just statements that contradict that. He says one thing one day and another the next. And it's never consistent. It's 155 or nothing else, or I'll fight at 160 one day in 2018. So what is it? Are you eager to fight? You're not afraid of anyone? So you have them come up into the ring and then not fight them and give up your belt for it? Like, what? I don't know. I can't really make a certain say on Canelo. But I am understanding if, he is just really taking the grunt for Oscar De La Hoya, which Max Kellerman, like I said, is under the belief that Golden Boy doesn't want to expose their one and only star to a threat. Yeah, but you are probably hinting the question mark I'm adding to that, because I'm under the idea that if you have a fighter who's very popular, what does it hurt to have him take the most lucrative and popular fight? What's there to lose, win or lose, after that? Because he already has a defeat, and one of the worst defeats of the person he suffered that defeat from. So I don't get it. And on top of that, what that really exposes is how empty your I'm gonna say closet, because there's baggage with that, is with the pictures that Oscar De La Hoya has, but he just shows how empty his stable is. That's better, right? You got Jojo Diaz, who's on this undercard, and this whole card period, man, bad. But we'll get to it. So yeah, Max Kellerman goes out his way. He tells him, why are you taking the grunt of this when it seems that your promoter has ideas for you to go another way? And says, it's a team, blah, blah, blah. We made an offer. Basically great stuff for a politician running for president. Questions or answers to questions that you could really only follow up with if you could actually look up that statement. Like you just pull out air facts and it just fills the brain with partially of a satisfactory answer, but you are like, wait, what? No. The offer that Canelo Alvarez is referring to, that he and his team had offered to Canelo, wow, that might be the thing, to Golovkin, was basically the fight that we had already talked, or at least the agreement that was already up for their negotiations already, which is basically the September 2017 fight, in which actually I like Abel Sanchez's answer out of it, because it was, he's kind of a smart ass, and I think that's what so many really hate about him. But he basically said that if there wasn't an answer to, or there wasn't an answer to the offer, is because it was a bad one, or it wasn't a realistic one, which I highly doubt. It ended up being posted up on the news, and Tom Loeffler even said that, like, he wouldn't actually even disclose how much the money they had offered at a flat fee, in which Loeffler also said that he would reject. We, of course, recall Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, where Floyd offered Manny Pacquiao a flat fee of $400 million, or not 400, but $40 million. And luckily, Pacquiao was a smart man and said, nah, but we'll do a split. And he came out $60 million richer for not taking that flat fee. So I think it'd be a good idea if Gennady Golovkin tries his luck with doing a split. And like it should. Because while Canelo can do great numbers, it has to be against a great fighter. And clearly, with the stalling of the numbers being released for this fight, they're not that good. And it's showing that you're not going to be able to fight whoever the fuck McCall from Pillsbury Island, wherever. You can't do it. And you're not going to just pick whoever and land these big fights. The backlash, I told you, was going to be fierce. The moment he dropped the title, that was it. I mean, it's a shame because, well, not really. It's actually a lovely thing. Because now what this does is put Canelo into a very vulnerable position as far as taking a risk. Because now he has won the WBO championship, in which he would be preparing to fight. Well, depends on what the voluntary situation is. But he would be pretty much lined up to fight Andrade if as a mandatory. And it's pretty clear that Canelo's seeking the easier 154-pound champion. So I kind of want to scratch that out. I just wanted to get it out there. But it seems like that might be the least likely scenario, because... And I feel like I'm just this is just me getting the boxing fans' hopes up, including myself, because I feel like I've said this before, which I have. I've read this before. Is the fact that Canelo is quoted at saying that this could possibly be his last fight at 154, and looking likely to move up to 160 pounds. Oh, yeah, that's right. I did hear that before. And then the next opponent that was announced was Amir Khan. You see how the backlash works? Now you're having to deal with all these different types of situations. And on top of that, if he can land a middleweight fight, let's see who's out there for him who doesn't give him a slightly decent fight. Stevens, I think, gives him a hard time. David Lemieux is a great fight, in which I probably still favor Canelo, but man, is he going to take some... He's going to take some shots. So it's looking more likely that Golovkin versus Jacobs is the next fight for Golovkin to take place. Obviously, that still has to go to a purse bid, but we'll see. And let's see, what else are we gonna? Am I missing? Yeah, we talked about the agreements, the injury. And we actually didn't even talk about how the fight ended. For you guys who watched it, this was probably just cool just to, have to talk about. For those of you who actually didn't watch the fight, I'm so sorry to leave out the details until, how long am I in? About like 20 minutes in? Yeah, the fight went on. I actually believe, was it Liam Smith suffered a body shot that, a ripping one, that took him down. He went to a knee and got back up. And it was actually that knockdown, I believe that was in the 7th, was the one that I thought was just a matter of time. I think, all right, well, he's going to get back up. I didn't think he was actually going to get up at all. Then got up. Continues to fight on, which is a valiant effort for anyone who just doesn't box or really just doesn't appreciate what actually goes on through these fighters. But it's the body shots that are hard to recover from. They always tell you, like Emmanuel Stewart is famous for always saying this on the air, is that it's harder to come back from a body shot. You can recover from, a knockdown, but it's hard to get that win back. But he went through it, and clearly it looked like a strategic plan for Canelo to actually go to the body early, because I think that he was expecting Liam Smith to try to beat him in the long haul. And it's seeming that that's kind of just true for, or at least Canelo Alvarez, for most fights going on along this way too. It seems like that's a good, or at least a strategy that he likes to do, is to go to the body early. It was the same case with Amir Khan, and I guess it just never hurts overall just to do that, because with Amir Khan, you're worried about the movement and speed, which of course can be worn down by effective body punches. Then with a fighter who I always thought, and I mentioned in the prior podcast, that Canelo can be outworked and can be effective with the volume. If you're tough enough to stand it in there with him, because Liam Smith, that's the only thing he offers for him, or to offer to do while being active. He's not a mover. So, I definitely thought that would take place. And maybe I slightly put a little too much into Liam Smith. But overall, I got the pretty same expectations of what I expected of him. Better than I thought, but just as average as I thought he was. So, just valiant effort, like I said again, from Liam Smith. Looked pretty good when he was landing. It just seemed a bit one-dimensional, And like I said, now, now is kind of a tough time, really, because Canelo obviously hurt his right thumb, so he will be done for the rest of 2016. Says it looks like he won't be back until 2017. Of course, is still looking for a major date for Cinco de Mayo weekend. The details for that are still unknown. But listen, I think we all in agreement when I say that his next fight has to be at 160, and he has to face a prior Golovkin foe. That's when the attentions are real, things are going to work out, panic button averted, But, it's like Max Kellerman really put it out there, and it's kind of odd, man. You look at like the way of a press conference goes, and how Max was just very confrontational. Just the most confrontational way I could see. Like it's hard because like he's passive, but very direct at the same time. Like he's reiterating that, well, I see that you maybe want to fight. Can't you understand that, that you're the one who's looking like you're ducking, even though it's your promoter that's not wanting you to take the fight? I mean, on top of that, he told him, well, it's, I also wanted to point out, and this is why Canelo got pretty furious with, him keep edging on this, are you or are you not ducking Golovkin? In between time, he had Canelo walk away, going Viva la Mexico to just answer nothing, really. And sounded a little bit more pissed off in a way of just to, walk out. So in between the time of Canelo walking away from him and the translator getting the last bit of what he said, and to the time of him switching over to Liam Smith, he says, I think it's worth noting that just like Oscar De La Hoya, once he got a hold of his career, that he didn't duck anyone. Or I'm paraphrasing, but that's along the lines that he's saying. He's like, basically, Oscar, you never ducked anybody, and once you got a hold of your career, why are you doing the same thing that you clearly accused others of doing, and you never did it. So what exactly is going on here? And to that point, and I was watching First Take the other day, and while it didn't bring up the point to me, but Stephen A. Smith, who surprisingly the one who's talking boxing there, and Max Kellerman, and Stephen A. Smith, it's Stephen A. Smith that underlines the point for me, was that he was talking about how Oscar De La Hoya was supposed to be the breath of fresh air for, the startup promotion company. And turns out, he just turns out to be, the same hair of the wolf of all these other promoters, And even more so is what reminded me of to the point is, remember exactly how Oscar De La Hoya was talking at this point in time last year, where he was shitting on Al Heyman and Bob Arum for taking way too long to make the best fights happen, and that we're all about action and we're all about what the fans want. Literally a year ago saying all this shit. I mean, he did about 3 days worth of press coverage and everything. I can find the boxing scene articles where he was just shitting on them. Just talking about how they just couldn't make the fights and all this other stuff. And here we are. And Oscar De La Hoya plays the vertical speed bump. And by that I mean a really tall speed bump. I hope the wording didn't fuck anybody up. But I guess I'm just going to close things out by just talking about what, from what I saw Saturday night, does his chances get any better against Gennady Golovkin in a fight in the foreseeable future, 2017/18? Like I said, wasn't necessarily impressed, and I feel bad to try to be neutral about this because it seems like, Canelo, he's not that good. He's never really that good after every performance. And though I do think he is playing a role in not letting the fight happen, I still think he's a slightly decent fighter, not as good as people think. Popularity does not carry over into actual skills. So I think he is not balanced out in that way. He's a very decent fighter. Like I said, I would say I have him as a B plus fighter. Hittable. And does pretty decent things offensively. So that's about it. And his countering. So is basically what's supposed to be shaping up, right? His countering ability is what's supposed to set him apart against Gennady Golovkin. I still think Golovkin is too smart, too savvy inside as a fighter, and his height and size isn't necessarily the it isn't necessarily overbearing, but the Kell Brook fight aside, he really fills out that 160 weight, or at least whatever he weighs in on the night of the fight. So I still think Golovkin is still smarter, but I would say Canelo's chances are slightly better now. I still see him losing, and I still see him getting knocked out, but it'll be a better fight. A slightly better one that would have happened last year. That being said, that wraps things up with me. You guys can, of course, follow all my social media outlets. G.Alé Dampier on Facebook. Georgie Dampier on Twitter. GeorgieDampeer. Instagram, G.Alé6. And YouTube me, Georgie Dampier. Pretty basic. Till next time, I'm out. Keep your hands up, y'all.